Hello everyone, I'll just give it a minute for people to join in and then we can get started. Okay, I can see lots of people are starting to join. So hello, I'm India Cannon, the Social Media and Events Assistant at ISC Research, and welcome to this live demo of the new ISC Outreach portal. This is your portal to the international schools market. Today we're joined by Sam Estebanez and William Saville, who are Business Development Managers at ISC Research. They will be running through the new Outreach portal and highlighting some of the new key features available and discussing how it can help inform your segmentation within the international schools market. There is a Q&A at the bottom, so feel free to put your questions throughout the webinar and we will get through to you at the end. And if you have any technical issues, then first of all, we advise to log out of Zoom and then log back in. Hopefully this fixes your issue, but if not, then please put it into the Q&A and I'll be able to assist you. We are recording today's webinar, so you should receive a copy into your inbox tomorrow. And just as a little reminder, we do have a small incentive going on. So Sam and Will share more information on this during the presentation. But just to highlight, if you book a demo off the back of this webinar, you will receive a free copy of the Purchasing and Resourcing 2024 report, which is usually £395. So I'll hand over to Sam and Will and we can get started. Thank you.
Thanks very much, India. Just going to go ahead and share my screen for everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you're based and dialing in from. Existing and new clients alike, welcome to the new kind of first view of our new portal that we released earlier this month. So for the majority of the next kind of 45 minutes or so, we're going to be touching upon the new portal and how it can support you in reaching the right school and stakeholders for your given solution. For many of you in the audience who are already using our platform, I'd also encourage you to schedule your usual training sessions and to go into the platform in a little bit more detail with our client services team. All existing clients will have received an email directly from our CEO, Lee, outline some simple instructions on how to access the new platform. You will need new credentials, so when registering to this new platform. So it's really important that you follow the instructions in the email. And if you have lost this for whatever reason, totally get it. These things can be lost in your inbox. Do contact us directly. In the meantime, though, I think the logic and functionality for those used to the platform are very similar to what you'll be used to. There are, of course, kind of various different additional benefits to the new platform, ranging from kind of the use of updated technology in the back end. So we've moved to Power BI and GraphQL for anyone aware of those two technologies, and we'll talk a little bit about that in greater detail as we get to the demo, essentially to ensure kind of better optimized data retrieval, more flexibility when kind of doing cross analyses within the analysis tab in the portal, which hopefully will become apparent in just a moment as well. There's going to be better interoperability as well. So essentially the integration of third-party tools, meaning the possibility for ISC Outreach to evolve into a bit more of a fully fledged CRM for educational suppliers, is sales and marketing teams, with the ability to kind of integrate payment providers and typical CRM solutions that you will all be using in one way or another, essentially to allow you as the end user to kind of stay in one platform for longer. It's also, as I mentioned, going to give you better opportunities for cross analyses within that analysis tab. I think that's perhaps one of the most important updates. So we'll talk a little bit about that in detail. Will and I are then going to kind of be touching on the state of the international schools market a little bit, predominantly compared to the UK market at the moment, and why, at least in our experience in the last few months, we've seen more kind of educational suppliers deciding to export their solutions overseas as well. We're going to kind of wrap up by talking about 3 common misconceptions based on our own experience and insights gained from the work that we do, and those kind of misconceptions coming from companies that are eyeing up the international school space and need a little bit of advice there. Hopefully that becomes valuable for many of you. And then we're going to kind of finish off with a brief conversation about what it means to be a customer of ISC and the opportunities granted to you by aligning yourselves with us and highlighting what to expect from us in the coming months for educational suppliers as well. So Will and I have both been end users of the ISC Outreach platform. Please do connect with us via your preferred channels. You've got a couple of QR codes on the screen there, as you'll see. We'd love to have a chat. I'm sure we've kind of encountered some exact or even similar kind of concerns that many of you might be going through at the moment when you're considering the international school space. And we'd love to kind of share some thoughts there. As a brief kind of anecdote from me, I guess, I've used the ISC Outreach platform for a few years prior to joining ISC as an employee in various different businesses. And essentially, I've used it for a few ways, creating business plans, go-to-market strategies for my former SLT or board of directors. I've used the platform to kind of pinpoint very specific target audiences to help get the solutions that I was responsible for in front of the right schools and stakeholders. And thank you, India. I've just realized I'm not actually sharing my screen, so thank you. Otherwise I could have done the whole demo without actually doing that. So thanks very much. So yeah, as I was mentioning, I've used the platform in various different ways. And I've also used it to kind of stay up to date with key regional updates in terms of legislation and curriculum trends across the international school space. And I've also used the platform on the go during my international travel at various different conferences. And all of this we're going to be talking a little bit about and hopefully visualize that for you within the new platform as well. So I think this is a great time to formally introduce my colleague, Will. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Will, your previous roles prior to joining ISC, and a little bit about how you used ISC Outreach in the past as well. I think you'll then move on to give us a little bit of a brief overview for those in the audience that are new to the international schools market of what ISC kind of provide for educational suppliers and how exactly we do that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sam. So as you've mentioned, I have been an end user of the ISC Outreach portal as well. I've now been in international education for 10 years, working for a couple of education suppliers who use the portal, and it has really been instrumental in helping me promote and develop relationships with schools, and also to raise awareness and to sell products and services directly into the international schools market. Two of the key things I've really loved about the portal and I've used extensively is the school groups information. So there's a range of information around all of the school groups, which are growing in number and importance. Many of you will be aware of some of the big brand names, and there's some great tools at the that Sam will show you later around how you can analyze which schools you're currently working with in school groups, and potentially where that white space is to go and sort of proactively develop relationships with other schools in the school group. So I use that quite extensively in previous roles. One other area, and I always think this area is slightly overlooked, and I don't know if you'd agree, Sam, is the market intelligence and country reports and some of the more specialized reports that we do at ISC as well. So, we've got a very strong reputation with international schools, and we use a lot of the information and the data we collect to create reports such as country reports, which are going to give you all of the educational context, policy, regulatory requirements that you need to put the data into action as well. So I would definitely recommend, if you are new to the portal, to have a look at these reports. It's really going to help you when you're new to markets, or if you're looking at new markets that you might want to go and win in. So definitely look at those as well. Before Sam gets going on a portal demo, let me just give everyone a refresher who ISC is. And for those of you who are new to ISC, it's going to give you a bit more context to why the international schools market is so important and so attractive. So as you can see, ISC has been in the international schools market for around 30 years now. We celebrated our 30th birthday this year, so we've been around for a good number of years, and we've built really strong relationships with international schools and international school groups as well. We do a number of services in the international school sector, so we work directly with international schools and do bespoke reporting and benchmarking services. We work with education investors who might potentially want to open new schools or build new schools or acquire new schools. We work with higher education institutions who are looking to attract new students onto their courses. And then we also work with education suppliers to help them understand the international schools market in further detail and help them to promote and build relationships with international schools so they can sell their own products and services into this sector as well. As you can see from the screen, we collect a huge amount of data over a year. 200,000 data points are collected and verified in our portal, which is a live portal as well. So that's very, very important. We're constantly adding new pieces of data, updating pieces of data to make sure that the data is as high quality as possible. And we really, really want to emphasize that as well. As we go through, I want to also make you excited about the international schools market. You can see some great stats on the screen, but the international school market is also growing, and it has been for the last 10 years. It's had a 50% growth rate over the last 10 years, and there are now over 14,500 international schools around the world, with total fees from the income fee now nearly being 65 billion, up from 36 billion 10 years ago. So again, another huge increase in terms of tuition fees. So it's a very interesting market for education suppliers to look at, particularly if they've got strong domestic markets, huge growth opportunities, and lots of schools wanting to find out what's available in the market as well.
For sure, thank you, Will. Yeah, and definitely, if anyone's interested in having a bit more of a chat, whether you're an educational supplier, an investor, we have specific departments that will, we can put you in touch with to have a bit more of a conversation. But yeah, certainly a buoyant market, as seen kind of historically with COVID and various other kind of macroeconomic factors. International school market has certainly kind of bounced back, so all quite promising. I think it'd be quite interesting to have a little bit of a chat just before we get into the actual demo. If any of you are kind of familiar with BESA's great work with UK-based educational suppliers and their own market coverage, you'll know that 2023 was a bit of a difficult year for educational suppliers selling into the UK. If you haven't already, or if you're unfamiliar with the report, The State of the Estate for BESA members is a really, really interesting read. And again, they've recently just published the BESA Barometer report as well, a couple of, in fact, I believe about a month ago or so, just under. And although there are some kind of improvements, 2024 to 2025 still looks quite bleak for companies focusing on the UK schools market for various reasons. So I would strongly recommend anybody in the audience that isn't aware of BESA's work, or particularly those two recent reports, I'd strongly recommend to have a look. I at least have been seeing some of that in my conversations actually with companies kind of looking to go into the international school space. I'm not sure about you, Will, but there's been an increasing kind of number of educational suppliers coming to me with their international schools plans after having kind of decided to tackle this market instead of the UK. Typically, they've hired maybe one or two people that are solely focused on the international schools market, or they might be in the process of hiring certain people to head up their international schools division. And they have somewhat of a starting point, some definitely more defined than others, but in terms of a starting point, they've certainly got some form of go-to-market strategy, and now they're kind of needing the necessary tools such as ISC Outreach for their disposal. Now, I thought I'd break up the actual kind of brief demonstration into three main sections. So the first one here, we've got segmentation. Now, we're going to be using an example of a UK-based company eyeing up the Middle East market, as they've had a few schools in the region but aren't sure kind of how to capitalize on this kind of theoretical product that I've made up is aligned to the UK curriculum, and it's a teaching and learning tool essentially to support assessment preparation for K-12 students. Now, the company is struggling to get a laser-focused list of schools and the corresponding information they need to reach their target audience. And obviously, I hope you can appreciate this is just an example for the purposes of this webinar, but I hope the logic behind some of the segmentation and the filtering that will become apparent becomes apparent to you all, as I know you'll be coming at this from different contexts. We're then going to kind of go into a little bit about accuracy within the platform. So one of the functionalities of the platform that is often asked about is the contact database, and more specifically, kind of how we gather that data. So to answer actually that question right off the bat, our desk-based research team, it's an individual kind of department within ISC. They aim to get approximately 40 contacts per school within our database, and we'll look at that in just a second. We do know that, you know, the sales processes, whether it be in the UK or overseas, it does require a lot of stakeholders involved. So we typically aim to get, as I say, that number, that magic number around 40, and they can range from individual teachers that you might start pilots with all the way to heads of department, and of course kind of senior leaders and decision makers. Aside from the fact that we obtain these direct emails for you, whether that be across the individual schools, the school groups, the associations, even the accrediting bodies, many suppliers do lean on our own departments almost as an extension of their SDR, their typical kind of SDR function within their own business, rather than kind of having to outsource a lot of that R&D work for an extra fee. Our team average out at about 1,900 to 2,000 direct email addresses for key stakeholders per month. As we all know, it's pretty hard to stay on top of not only actually getting the emails, but updating them. We know that, you know, international educators are typically on expat contracts that will last 2 to 3 years, and then they'll move on to a different international school. So we do update these as well on a monthly basis. Now, as an educational supplier, and I've certainly been in these shoes, and I'm sure, Will, you can probably attest to this as well, but you've got to consider how much time and money is allocated to hiring maybe interns or giving kind of CRM expansion plans to expansion tasks, to more junior members of the team, and what kind of effect this has on your overall running of the business, and how much time it's taking away from business development. Now, our desk-based research team, and we'll touch a little bit on the field-based research team in just a second, they're also responsible for maintaining other school records up to date as well, whether that be accreditations, curriculum offered, tuition fee fluctuations. All of this information is pretty vital in your discussions with schools and the understanding of kind of local markets. And again, all of that information we do for you, so you don't need to outsource or spend months on R&D for this kind of information. Now, we of course also have our field-based research department, as I mentioned, and they're comprised of kind of strategically hired individuals around the world who will travel actually to the schools themselves and obtain the data and market intelligence that inform the majority of our reports directly from the source of truth. Again, educational suppliers kind of should consider this department as an extension to their own employees, and they've proven countless times, invaluable to many educational suppliers, particularly those that are relatively new to the international schools market. Instead of them having to, like I say, provide a lot of kind of R&D resources, you can rely on our departments that have been doing this for, as Will mentioned, kind of 30 years to this year. We'll then kind of wrap up with business strategy development. And again, what I mean by that is, and again, speaking of what our FBR team do, using the market intelligence reports and specialist reports strategically, whether that be to inform your go-to-market strategies, or providing this information to your sales or marketing reps so that they can actually provide value-add follow-ups within kind of existing pipeline discussions that you might have. They come in super handy even to kind of upskill existing sales reps, or you can use it as your onboarding training for new hires so they can get an understanding of the local markets that you want them to be targeting. We'll be talking a little bit about that in more detail. We're going to be looking at the calendar of events within the portal. So if you joined our annual conference earlier, about a month ago or so, you'll be aware that trade shows and conferences are still the most effective way to reach senior decision makers and raise brand awareness for your company. I'd argue, in fact, if you are going to a trade show expecting to make money within the first kind of 6 to 12 months of attendance, I'd probably argue that you're going for the wrong reasons. And I know we'll talk a little bit about that in more detail, but we typically see a decent ROI on industry events after year 2 or even year 3 and beyond. So that's certainly something to consider. We're then going to look at the association section of the portal. So many of you in the audience may want to consider a partnership to support business development and your various marketing initiatives. Some associations are more active in certain regions, and they can be a good way to reach schools, definitely. Again, if you were wanting to work within a school association, you can do this and segment your list quite specifically within the platform as well. So I think enough talking. Let's have a look at the actual platform. So all of you in the audience can start visualizing this a little bit more. I mentioned just now that we'll be using kind of the example of a UK-based company wanting to target Western Asia, and their particular solution aligning themselves quite well with UK-orientated schools. So have that example in mind as I go through this, so that what you're seeing becomes a little bit more kind of palpable, let's say. We're going to start within the schools database. Now, essentially what you're seeing here is the full schools database. That number is inclusive of online schools, future schools, and independent schools. So we do get data for those 3 categories. I am going to exclude them for the time being, so that we can see the true number of international schools that we're dealing with here, 14,572. As hopefully all of you are seeing here. The first thing to note here is the list view. You can go into each individual school account, but before I do that, I want to apply those filters with that example company in mind. As I mentioned, we're focusing on Western Asia as our sub-region, but you can see you can determine your kind of region of choice depending on what makes most business sense for your company by using the regional and the sub-regional filters. Western Asia is comprised of these individual countries, so predominantly the GCC, but there are a few outside there that certainly should be considered as well. Turkey, being a great example of a burgeoning kind of international school market there as well. But for the moment, let's include Western Asia as the sub-region. We can immediately see out of those kind of 14,500 or so schools, 2,238 are coming from Western Asia. Now, there's various use cases that you can do within these by using these filters. You can filter by a specific curricula. I mentioned that this particular theoretical product aligns itself to the UK curriculum, so I might want to have a look at how popular Cambridge is there as an example. I can also go down to the association level as an example. Again, I might want to target schools that are part of Fabesia or, IRCOS, kind of any leading association within the international school space. They typically do their own industry events, and prior to going to those conferences, you'll have a lot of educational suppliers planning their outreach, and this is a great way to kind of segment your lists that way. As you can see, you can filter for examinations. You can filter for groups. So it might be that you want to target one particular quarter of the financial year, focus all of your time on, targeting specific schools, part of a school group that you might be working with 2 or 3 international schools, but you want to kind of start leveraging that and ideally get that group deal that educational suppliers always are striving for. We'll talk a little bit more about the filters in a bit of detail in just a second, but I hope the logic there is understood. If we look at the orientation here and look at UK orientated schools in Western Asia, we can immediately see that just over 50% of those total number of international schools are leaning towards kind of UK curriculum, UK pedagogy. So if I was putting myself in the shoes of that theoretical business owner of that theoretical product, I could then start seeing that there's actually quite a good business case to consider Western Asia as a sub-region of choice. Scrolling down a little bit more, you can kind of, we're not just serving full K-12 suppliers. You know, there's a lot of suppliers that I speak with that their product is not suitable for maybe the earlier years. So you can kind of filter schools by age of students, number of students, and of course, the average tuition fees of the school. I know, again, a lot of educational suppliers will work on business models that they've already determined the kind of per user cost and the per school cost, and what that has to be to warrant a good kind of return on investment. So that's a particularly nice way to get a target audience as well. If we apply those filters now, we have our list view of schools in Western Asia. The list, the school list will give you all of the individual schools as part of that criteria, and a typical individual school record will look a lot like this. Those of you in the audience will be very familiar with this. It's obviously had a pretty big revamp on the front end, but the actual kind of functionality behind it is pretty much identical. There have been improvements certainly to the interactive map. It's a lot more accurate, and you can go down to the street view. We're going to be talking a little bit about that in the map section in just a second. But for those of you that are new in the audience, this is the minimum information that we get from the school. As you can see here, it's a good kind of snapshot of the school, and I typically use this before getting on an impromptu call or sending out email campaigns. I would look at this in my kind of pre-meeting planning. If I scroll down a little bit more, we're going to give you the curricula, the examinations, even the facilities that are provided at that individual school. A lot of educational suppliers I'm speaking with providing kind of STEM solutions, and they want to prioritize those schools that have a robotics lab or even an innovation center. I speak to a lot of kind of sports and extracurricular companies that might want to prioritize the playing field, the tennis courts. I think hopefully you can understand the logic there. So it's quite a nice way to start again segmenting your priority lists. Again, we will give you information as to the school accredited, if they're accredited by any kind of organizations such as CIS, I'm sure many of you have heard of, as well as kind of association membership of that individual school. And we'll touch upon that over here as the associations and accrediting bodies have their own section. Right at the bottom here, you then also have the full contacts of the majority of the people that we can find. I'm going to skip past that relatively quickly as I don't want any GDPR nightmares coming my way. But as I mentioned, and just to reiterate, we're looking at kind of 40%, 40 contacts per school. One thing I actually believe I forgot to mention last month, we actually hit our lowest ever percentage for generic emails within the contact database. So we're currently sitting at around 84% of our emails are direct emails for anyone interested in those stats. If we go back to the school lists and go through these parts here, as this is where most of our educational suppliers spend their time within the portal. We've got Western Asia obviously as one of our active filters. So this is quite useful. I mentioned that I used ISC quite a lot on the go. If I was to go kind of on my international travels to certain places, I'd be using this to actually plan maybe 1 week prior, 1 week after the industry event to ideally get some school visits booked in. And you can see here immediately those in the audience that might perhaps be attending Guest Dubai. This is a particularly timely example. We can go down to the street view and see kind of hotspots of where the majority of the schools are. And of course, going into the individual school record as easily as that. Now, the analysis tab is, there's a lot of use cases that can come out of the analysis tab, and this for existing clients on the call, you'll see quite a lot of changes here compared to the old platform. And as I mentioned at the start, the ability to kind of cross-analyze here is far greater than in the old platform, and hence one of the reasons why we've moved to Power BI. But just to show a couple of examples, what we're looking at here is a breakdown of Western Asia by curriculum, by orientation, examinations, age range, enrollment, fees, and tuition fees, sorry. And to bring back that example of the UK company wanting to target Western Asia, as that particular business leader, I'm looking here and I can immediately see that the UK curriculum is the most popular in Western Asia. Again, another good argument for me to start thinking of Western Asia as a key region for my solution. You can do this for all of the curriculum that we've got included in the platform, as well as the orientations. The tuition fees section down here is quite useful. I used to use it for having to kind of price certain solutions, new products that we were releasing to new markets at the time. And we didn't want to either outprice ourselves or even kind of undervalue ourselves. So it's quite a nice way to get average tuition fees. It's no surprise, I'm sure, to anybody that, the majority of the schools in Western Asia here are considered premium international schools. They're offering tuition fees of 12K USD per year and above. The schools by region, you can go down to the city level. So if we start breaking down this data a little bit, in fact, I'll show you this in a bit nicer of a format. You can then see down to a country level, of course, with UAE, no surprise, leading the way there in Western Asia. But if we wanted to, for example, guess Dubai coming up, and we wanted to start doing a little bit of market research there to determine, if it makes sense to go to any kind of neighboring cities, Sharjah, Al Ain, they're very close to Dubai, and they have a considerable amount of international schools there. Now, the cross analyses, again, I'll be using a specific example, but the logic is exactly the same regardless of what you want to compare here. But I might want to actually have a look at the fees across these particular cities as opposed to on a country level or a sub-regional level. This is also going to actually allow me to do that. And again, irrespective of the geography, the functionality is the same. So you can get into some pretty granular details here that can essentially inform your go-to-market strategies. I've seen a lot of and spoken to a lot of educational suppliers that use this, in preparation for pitches, for if they're in a pre-seed, pitches and putting this information into presentations. There's a lot of use cases here. Again, appreciate that everyone will be coming at this from different contexts, but more than happy to kind of tailor this to anyone who wants a little bit more of a one-to-one conversation. The group section here on the left will obviously touch briefly upon how important groups are. This is, I'm going to be using Nord Anglia as an example here. What you've got here is a breakdown of the school group themselves, but quite interestingly, this is a nice update that at least I really like. All of the school campuses are actually in the same page, so you can then immediately see what schools are associated with which groups. You can add these certain groups to your active filters, whether it be Nord Anglia or any of the kind of 600 plus school groups that we have within the database. And of course, again, kind of start creating those granular lists to start, a little bit more of a methodical outreach rather than kind of, as I like to call them, spray and pray email campaigns. If we go into the associations now, the functionality is pretty much identical. We're working with around 82 associations in the international school space at the moment. Using Western Asia as an example, we'll have a look at kind of EACOS or Fabesia, ones that are quite active in the regions across Asia. Again, we have good relationships with these associations. We like to do these introductions to them, and a lot, educational suppliers do see associations as a really good channel to go into the international school market. And like I say, many kind of associations such as IRCOS or Fabricia will not only do their annual leadership conference, but they'll do kind of breakout conferences, whether that be on sports or STEM or computational thinking. There's a lot of different conferences that are smaller and might be better suited for you guys in the audience to attend. Again, similar to the groups as well as the accrediting bodies that we'll have a look at in just a second, all of those school campuses that are associated members of IRCOS will again be listed here, and you can go into these individually to see the individual school records as well. The functionality is exactly the same for accrediting bodies. Again, I used to work at an educational supplier that had to have strong relationships with accrediting bodies. And I know a lot of educational suppliers are using accrediting bodies to help kind of vet their content and ensuring that they're kind of adhering to local data privacy laws, for example. So it's a great way to kind of have a look at the most active accrediting bodies in any given region, how many schools they might have. And of course, if we use CIS as a good example, you'll see here all of the schools that are CIS accredited as well. The news section here, somewhat overlooked, but a really, really nice way for educational suppliers to stay up to date with either brand new schools opening, kind of a goldmine for many suppliers wanting to get into schools earlier instead of schools having to kind of migrate from platform to platform. Really, really good goldmine for new schools, but it doesn't just stop there. We kind of speak about more kind of industry news, such as the IBO introducing new rules for the IB diploma program. As you can see here, a list of international schools in Portugal. And this news section can kind of be filtered by event, country, and by date as well. We've both touched a little bit on the reports section, and for, again, many of you in the audience, you'll see a much nicer UI, at least on the front end. We're using Western Asia as an example here. These regional, sub-regional reports and specialist reports, they are included in a license depending on kind of the regions that you choose. But this is kind of the end product of months of work from our field-based researchers that essentially collate all of this information directly from the schools. And again, these can be applied to many use cases that I mentioned at the start of this webinar. As you can see, we could be here for a very long time going into these reports, but to give you a brief kind of overview of what to expect in these, and we typically release these every year between August and September, we'll give you kind of a market overview in terms of numbers and the growth over a 5-year period based on these 3 categories here. And we go into kind of a country level as well for that information. I hope I'm not going too quickly, but I am conscious of time. And as I say, we could be here for a very long time crunching these numbers. But one thing I did want to particularly show you was obviously the curricular trends. For many of you, that will be quite pertinent based on your solution, as well as the examinations. And we go into details in terms of kind of the most active associations there, the most active accrediting bodies. As Will mentioned at the start, the regulatory landscape that will directly impact many of you in the audience, I'm sure. It certainly has done to me in the past. The calendar view, really, really nice way to kind of scaffold on top of the map and analysis view that I showed you, depending on how much you're going to prioritize international travel. We list all of the major industry events here, whether they be online or in person. So again, using this in tandem with the map view is a really nice tool. I've just realized I forgot to briefly mention a particular functionality that I used to use quite a lot. And I want to just briefly finish on that. We mentioned that we wanted to target Western Asia and those schools that are kind of leaning towards the UK orientation here. what's particularly useful about this is you can then actually save these views over here. I created a couple just before this webinar, but essentially what you can do here is create these views and share them across your sales, your marketing departments, and they can use these and these are updated in real time. So at the time of kind of releasing a campaign, you might perhaps want to focus one quarter of a financial year on targeting these UK orientated schools and then move onto another kind of filtered list the second quarter. And this is a great way to kind of foster a little bit more of kind of cross collaboration between sales and marketing and ensure that everyone at the time of releasing those email campaigns are working on the same list and on essentially on the same page. So that's a little bit of a whistle-stop tour on the portal. We're going to go back to the slides now and kind of talk a little bit about these top 3 misconceptions. And I know, Will, you've got some pretty good opinions on the first bullet point there, an immediate ROI.
Yes, thanks, Sam, and thanks for the demo of the new portal. It looks great, and we're really excited about it. So one misconception, as we've mentioned, is lots of suppliers expect an immediate return on investment. And as we all know, with any sort of sales cycles and business development and marketing activities, things do take time, and it's the same in the international schools market as well. Unfortunately, there's no silver bullet in order to win in the market, and you need to do a sustained effort in order to, see successes that are going to come through. A key pillar of that success is going to be sort of data and being able to contact and build relationships with international schools and senior decision leaders. But you're also going to need to make use of other sort of initiatives as well. So sales and marketing campaigns that sustained over, a good period of time. You're going to be wanting to look at things like events, which we know are still hugely popular with education leaders and senior decision makers. You're going to be wanting to bring in things like social media and utilizing platforms like LinkedIn and X as well, which are hugely popular amongst the international schools community as well. So depending on your product, you're going to be thinking around at least 6 months to a year before you're going to start seeing return on investment. And then you've got to take into consideration your own sales cycles, whether you offer things like pilots as well. So although it is a lucrative and an attractive market, it does take a sustained effort to win in the market.
Definitely is. It's definitely a long-term investment, and for many of you in the audience, you'll be familiar with our work that we do with international school consultants. They will all say the same. And for those of you that are interested in kind of a more consultancy-led service, again, do reach out and mention that specifically, and we can put you in touch with a specific kind of consultant that meets your requirement, as we work with quite a few. That second point there, if a product works in the UK, it will work overseas. I've seen a lot of suppliers take that kind of philosophy. You've got to consider local cultural differences, to name one kind of obvious example. Internationalization doesn't just stop at translation of a service into the local language. Following on from the example I used in that brief demo, a company like that kind of has to vet their own content. They must ensure that they're kind of adhering to the KHDA requirements and the local regulations in the Middle East more generally. There is a lot of kind of censorship of certain content. And just on the point of the Middle East, I think if anyone didn't see the GCC webinar conducted by Estebanez and ourselves a couple of weeks ago, if Western Asia is of interest, which I'm sure it will be, as it's a very, very popular region for many reasons, I would definitely have a look at that webinar as well. Really, really insightful. Speaking with a couple of consultants that we work with. To add actually a fourth misconception here that I'm thinking about, the GCC is one region. Now that we're on the topic, you've got to consider the GCC and its nuances by country. If of course anyone in the audience is eyeing up that region. I think as well, under that point, website rebranding. I've encountered quite a few suppliers that have come to me. They've got a actually relatively good go-to-market strategy, and I check out their website, and you can immediately see that they're UK orientated. They might have kind of jargon there that suggests key stage 2 or 3, or they might kind of have reports on there based on Ofsted research, for example. That's not going to make any sense to international schools. Yes, it might make a bit of sense to British overseas schools, for example, but they're going to be working under a completely different set of rules the majority of the time. So you've got to consider that, consider adding, you know, an international school space section specifically for your product, if you know the international schools market is a priority for you. ISC is a contact database, one of our favorites, right, Will?
Yeah, so we often get told this when we sort of explain about what ISC do, and people just say, "Oh, you provide a database of contacts." And well, yes, we do that, but we do a lot more. And I hope from what Sam has shown you in the demo, some of the other areas where we can actually support business development and marketing activities. So although we do offer a valuable database of contact information, there's a wealth of information and support that we can provide that's going to help take that data to the next level as well. So as I've mentioned, and as Sam mentioned, we've got some fantastic reports out there that are going to give you that contextual information in order to put that data into practice as well. So ISC, we're a trusted partner across the international schools space. We work directly with the international schools, the school groups, the associations, the accrediting bodies as well. We're that trusted partner, and that's why we're so popular with education suppliers who are looking to sort of export their own products and services into the international school sector as well. Sam, I'm just conscious of time a little bit, so I hope you don't mind me asking and finishing on a question, which would be good to hear about. But what does it actually mean to be a client of ISC Research?
It's not a bad question. Put me on the spot a little bit. I think aside from what we've touched upon today, in the short kind of period of time we've got, one thing I haven't really mentioned is, a lot of the employees that kind of are full-time employees at ISC, they've been working in the international school sector specifically for many years. They've got their own networks, whether they be senior leaders at schools, consultants themselves, myself and Will as educational suppliers selling into international schools. We've all got our own kind of networks that we've fostered over the years, and I guess to sum it up, that piece of information or that person that you need to contact, instead of, as I like to say, instead of having to make 16 calls to get that bit of information that you need, rely on us to make it 1 or 2 calls, and that's certainly happened in the past. How about you, Will? You're not getting away with that one.
Yeah, well, I just want to highlight the other sort of areas where ISC can actually support suppliers. So obviously, one way is through the database, but we, as I've mentioned, as I've highlighted, we're more than just a database. And other stuff that you might want to be considering is looking at around raising brand awareness, and what we can do to help with support that as well. So we do a number of sort of areas to support existing users of the portal. We have our very popular community professional development webinars that we offer out to suppliers. We also have recently launched the ISC community, which is a great way of connecting with education leaders and senior decision makers, and I'd recommend everyone signing up to that. There's a lot of sort of data, intel, topics that we discuss on there as well, so it's a great way of finding out what's key points in the market, key topics that teachers are talking about, for that as well. We also have things like the ISL magazine and our International Schools Award package as well. So if you are looking to raise awareness of your brand, these are some really good options to do that, and that often makes it easier to actually get meetings with teachers if they're more familiar with you as an organisation. And we're also looking at other ways we can support suppliers to get in front of teachers and education decision makers in international schools, and to build those relationships so you can go and win in the international schools market as well. So ISC is your trusted partner for the international school sector.
Not bad. It's pretty good elevator pitch, I think. All jokes aside, I think it's all really valuable stuff, and I think those QR codes, please take a note of them. Just touching a little bit more on the masterclass series. So over the last few months, we have been listening to a lot of feedback from educational suppliers that we work with, and in fact, you know, those that we unfortunately haven't worked with for whatever reason. And based on that feedback, we're going to be recommencing the second run of masterclass series, targeting specifically educational suppliers, whether those be in the international school space already or eyeing it up for whatever reason. We're going to be talking to kind of founding business leaders that have gone into the international school space multiple times, the lessons learned there. We're going to be talking to CEOs of emerging international school groups, as well as kind of speaking with our international consultants and how best to kind of market to international schools as well. Hopefully that's going to provide a lot of insights to many of you. Brand awareness, Will has certainly touched upon that, and it can prove a very wise investment. Other than the kind of ISAs there, the International School Award, and joining the ISC community, I do also want to mention that about 3 weeks ago or so, we released some brand new package solutions that provide specific support for kind of early stage pre-seed companies that are specifically looking at, you know, the K-12 international school space. They come at a lower cost, less risk, and they also have a kind of wraparound service that includes brand awareness pieces such as, you know, advertising through our different channels, being listed in certain community supplier areas that we provide. So please do get in touch again if that's of interest. As India kindly mentioned at the start, we are offering the Purchasing and Resourcing 2024 report free of charge for those in the audience that schedule a meeting with us. If you can bear listening to either myself or Will for any longer, we'd love to have a little bit of a chat with you on a more one-to-one basis. And for those of you in the audience that have been with us for quite a few years, you'll remember our purchasing plans paper from a white paper from 2021. It was really popular. This is certainly an upgrade. I was having a brief read of it today. It goes into quite a bit of detail in terms of budgetary cycles of schools, what schools are spending their money on, what are their main pain points. So some really valuable information for educational suppliers. And on that note, I believe that is it. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. I hope it was a good starting point, at least for many of you. Those in the audience that are existing clients and were here to take a look at the new platform, very likely that wasn't enough, but I would strongly recommend scheduling a training session with Emma or Chloe, our dream team. They'll be more than happy to help you. And those that are new in the audience, I hope it sparks some thoughts. Please do reach out to Will or I. You've got our QR codes there, and looking forward to hopefully meeting some of you on a more one-to-one basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam and Will, for an amazing demo. Like they've said, if you'd like to get in touch, then please contact us. I can see that Will has been typing away at all the questions, but if you think of anything after the webinar, then again, just contact Sam and Will on the screen. And you should be receiving a copy of this recording tomorrow. And thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.